What's a fact checker in the news business? I mean, aren't all news reporters fact checkers? Pretty basic journalism to tell a story: who, what, where, why, when, and how. You know, facts. That's the news. That's journalism. That's any investigation for the truth. That's what a detective does. So what about this new phenomenon in journalism called fact checking? Isn't that what all journalism is? At least the news side of things? I mean, isn't that what the reporter himself would be doing in the first instance? And maybe that reporter's editor, just to check a few things, and maybe in some prickly cases, bring a lawyer in to really make sure everything's just airtight. But isn't a journalist who calls himself a fact checker just a journalist? Isn't that redundant? Don't all journalists already do that? Well, you see, I see there's something, I think there's something ideological about this new terminology. Trump liked to call out what he described as fake news. So he fact-checked the media in his own way, and they sure didn't like it. And they fact-checked him right back. That's another way of saying they argued. But these days, especially with Trump gone, fact-checking isn't actually about holding power to account. Not a lot of fact-checking of Justin Trudeau or Joe Biden. Fact-checking these days is when some journalists try to discredit other journalists, when some journalists, typically liberal journalists, but more accurately corporate journalists, try to discredit conservative journalists, but more accurately dissident independent journalists. Instead of holding the government to account, instead of holding lockdown politicians or Justin Trudeau or Joe Biden to account, these fact checkers try to hold reporters to account if they don't like those reporters. Now, I'm all for holding people to account if it really is fact-checking, but so much of what goes by fact-checking these days is just opinions. It's a smear, actually. It's an attempt to hush up those who would actually try to hold government truly to account. Here it is in contrast on a goofy story. Remember when this happened? It's just a couple months ago. Now look at how the New York Times handled that versus how it handled Trump walking carefully that one time. See, with Biden, the New York Times wants you to know he's just fine. With Donald Trump, there are health questions that need to be answered. I mean, if you think that's bad, that's nothing. There's a really funny satirical website called the Babylon Bee. Much funnier than The Onion, but it's conservative, so it's fact-checked all the time. A satirical site. It's a joke site. That's what satirical means. It's a site of absurd mockery. Humor, jokes. But because it comes from a conservative point of view and a Christian point of view, this joke site is fact-checked. They fact-check the jokes. Would you ever see anyone try to fact-check a comedy sketch on Saturday Night Live, the liberal comedy hour on TV? They'd be nuts. Everyone would say, "Are you crazy? That's a comedy sketch." But the Babylon Bee is actually fact-checked all the time. Here's a funny joke they made about Lego. You know Lego? No longer having male or female pieces. It's sort of funny. It's a one-liner. It's just a quick gag. It's like an image, really. It mocks the left, though, a little bit, right? So Politifact, a fact-checking website, literally tried to debunk the joke. It was a joke. But they actually phoned Lego to check. I swear to God, Lego did not respond to Politifact's query about the post. And that is so pathetic. So who pays for Politifact? It sounds so official, doesn't it? Well, look, lots of big corporate institutions pay for it. The two biggest being Facebook, as you can see, and TikTok. That's the Chinese Communist Party controlled app. So big tech, Mark Zuckerberg, and the Chinese Communist Party. Got it. That explains a lot, doesn't it? Say, do you think Politifact is going to fact check Mark Zuckerberg or China anytime soon. That's an excerpt from my daily show, the Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.